Yo, so just come and pop on here. I was deciding to make a more fun video, something that was closer to just random, fun stuff. And I was thinking about the idea of Haki from One Piece, which is like Haki means will or something like that. I think I'm pretty sure it's will. I hope it's will, because I'm like spreading lies here, but uh, means will in Japanese or something. Something like that. I don't know. I don't know. Don't take my word for that. I don't know. Either way, it's supposed to stand in for will, right? In the One Piece manga, the One Piece world, and with it, characters can do all sorts of crazy cool stuff. Like there's different types. There's uh there's the will of the Conqueror, the will of armament, will of observation, and those are the three. Actually, those are the big three. There might actually be more that we don't know about yet. I have a feeling that there's more that we don't know about yet. But yeah, essentially, armament Haki, armament will is like the biggest thing. It allows you to essentially put your will into other objects and make them. Like obviously it's a fighting thing, right? It's like, oh, okay, I can make this thing tough as steel, or but it's based on like the idea of like old Japanese sword fighting things, or just Asian culture in general, right? With like swords, uh, the idea of like real mastery with the sword, and how like a master can like cut at like a piece of paper and it'll either cut or it won't cut depending on if what the master wants to do with the sword. And so that's the idea here, is that like, oh, okay, uh, you just have such a will and control over another object, uh, that you can essentially make, in the story it's like, okay, you can make it harder than steel or harder than anything else that you possibly need it to, right? Depending on just your willpower. um, and then there's also observation Haki, the will of observation, right? Observation will. So it's your focus, essentially. How well can you focus and notice things? It's kind of like intuition too. uh, it's like if you can see the trends of like something that's happening, or like see further than, yeah, essentially, like it's you can see further than what other people would expect. And so you can use in the story, you can take that to mean like seeing further along, seeing way past what others can see, seeing into the future, seeing further. So that's that. And then there's the will of the conqueror, which is like essentially just a presence, a very strong presence that can uh, essentially move people out of your path at will. So like in the story, right? Essentially, if somebody uses that, anyone who doesn't have a strong will, who doesn't know who they are, don't know what they stand for, essentially don't know what they stand for. Keep that in mind. Uh, gets dropped, like just dropped, like you just foam up in the mouth, like they just faint and they're down for the count. They got knocked out just by the presence of someone who has this rare type of Haki, rare type of will, the will of the conqueror. Um, and so, yeah, I think that's sort of a stand-in for just like the aura and like the presence of like uh, someone who really believes in themselves versus someone who just shows up and thinks too much about it. Thinks too much about appearances. Is don't really believe in themselves. Those sorts of things, right? It's if you're in some sort of competition with someone who comes off with that presence, like, oh, I'm here to do this. I'm here to get some shit done. You feel me? Like, um, and you aren't that. If you're just kind of there for, sorry, it died on me. I don't know what. But yeah, if it's some sort of dealio like that in real life, right? Like somebody's out there really believing in themselves, and you aren't really believing in yourself, or or some other person isn't really believing in themselves, then like, GG, fam. Like that's not, you know, you gave up before you even had the thing, right? Had the deciding factor. That's essentially what that whole thing is, right? So this idea of will, that Oda plays around with. Echiro Oda is the mangaka they call him, right? But he's like the comic book artist, comic writer for this comic and this story. And so he weaves all the strings and he makes these brilliant story devices. And I think that Will is just such an interesting thing to outline because honestly, I feel like Oda teaches about life through his whole series. It's amazing. But yes, will is so important. Will is something that you can cultivate in your own life, I think. I think that you can cultivate all of the Hakis, all of I think that you can cultivate them in real life. I really do. I think that those are things that you can I mean, obviously it's not going to be like the shonen version of it, right? But like you can see the real parallels, right? Like I was just thinking about it while I was driving in my car because I was I cut it close. I really did. I cut it close. I'm traveling right now, so I'm driving, and yeah, my gas tank was like really low, and then all of a sudden I was crossing through a desert for 30 minutes, and it was 30 minutes to like the next gas station. I'm running on E, and I'm thinking, oh man. So I asked Spirit, and I was like, hey, please, I want to make it. Ask my guides, angels, dude, everybody, ask them all, spirit guides, ancestors, all of them, man. I'm like, hey, I just want to make it. Like, I just want to make it. I don't want to get stuck out here. It was already dark. Like, I was not trying to deal with it. Yeah, yeah, and and I could feel my car, and it brought me to moments too where like I've always felt like I had a good connection with like uh, material objects, honestly, which is odd to say, but like I used to, like animize or what is that? It's they try to call it like condition in like anthropology and yeah, anthropology and sociology, I think, whatever. Yes, they try to call. Whoa, I got a little sparkling in my eye. Anyway, they try to call whenever you give the characteristics of people and like beings to inanimate objects. They call that animism, right? And they say that like that's basically like the basic form of all religion. And I think that's a fair way to look at it. From that bare bones, like looking from the outside in, trying to like act like everything's so alien to you, right? But yeah, to a certain extent, I do think that all of this is energy and all of this is consciousness and all of this could be something else in a different time frame. So call it animism if you will, but I've always felt a good connection with my things and I've always tried to take care of them. And I think a lot of people connect with that. It used to be like that when you're kids, right? You sit down the cup really hard and you're like, oh man, sorry cup, like I feel bad, like I hope you're okay. And like obviously you don't know what the cup feels. You don't know what the cup's experience of getting slammed or not slammed is. Like I don't know if that makes a difference, but you give it the presence and the respect of knowing that it's you know you're taking care of it. And obviously that does do something, right? Like same way our body has pain receptors so that we understand what's happening to the material of our body, but other things are obviously material too, and so yes, force will cause some sort of damage, and that stuff doesn't regrow. So I think that having a real connection with the matter around you uh, that you connect with, that you feel as an extension of you, especially like tools and like different things that you use regularly, like pens and the car, steering wheel, those sorts of things. I think that you do end up just the car in general. Like I feel like you end up feeling like you're walking while you're driving at some point, right? At least I do. I don't know if that's everybody, but yeah, to a certain extent, the things that you use every day do become an extension of you, and you do know how to use them, right? Like how close you can get to the side of somebody's car in your car. You know how difficult it is to park in in a parallel parking spot, but only because you can't see behind you, because you never see that part of the car. But you could still do it. You could still do it. And you do it with some weird kind of faith. I remember it while I was having this whole little like you know, train of thought essentially down in the desert. I was thinking about how when I first started driving, I thought, man, how in the actual like, how do people know where their car is? Like how do you gain this spatial perception of like how close you can get to stuff? And it's literally just by like trying. You literally just give it a go, you give it a try, and you figure it out. I remember I ended up having a friend over in Illinois who was from Georgia. He was a cool fella, and he got a new car at some point, and he was like, "Hey, do you guys have any trash cans that I can like bump around with my car just so I can find out the shape of it and how close I can get stuff?" And I was like, "That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. I'd never thought of that. Never once in my life." But that opened up a little bit of uh, a realization to like, man, that guy really already knew. He was like, you know what? How's the best way I can learn this thing? I'm just gonna bump around and stuff with it until I understand like my relation to it and how he was essentially accelerating that process of like becoming familiarized with this vehicle as an extension of you. Like that's crazy. Anyway, that's armament hockey. I think in my mind, I think that's armament hockey. I think that's the same. It's the same idea. Like when you're drawing, if you press really hard, you can break a pencil. If you press really hard, you can make really dark lines. If you press really soft, you can make really light lines. If you turn your pencil a certain way, like, and where the dull side and the sharp side's been on the pencil because of how you've been smeared it on the paper. You can make thin lines, you can make thick lines, you can do all that sorts of things. I think that is the precision they mean whenever you think of somebody using a sword and like being able to cut out a paper and either cut it if they want to cut it or not cut it if they don't want to cut it. That is control, right? That is integration, I should say. Uh, an extension of yourself, and that's exactly what armament hockey looks like and is depicted as in the story. It shows up as like a black overlay on like your arm extending onto like whatever weapon for them, or whatever thing that you're hockeying up, right? You're putting your will into. Um, in terms of observation hockey, I think that that's something that can be observed in like, or that is also talked about in like that movie Limitless. I don't know if you guys ever watched Limitless. I love that movie, man. It's so good. I always thought it was the coolest thing. I thought that I would be one of the coolest guys ever if I could figure out how to be like NZT and like that. Honestly, I think that's part of what spurred me down the spiritual path to like know things. But essentially, it's meditation, dude. That's it. Meditation. Learning how to control your focus and like learning where you can direct your focus so that you're really paying attention in all moments, so that you're really there, is a lot, because there's a lot happening constantly. But if you're there, present in the moment, then you create memories of all of it and you can remember it all. People think that they have bad memories. No one has a bad memory. It's just that you don't commit things to memory. You get really bored with, I don't know, at some point during our cultural upbringing in teenage years, it becomes cool to not care, right? It becomes cool to be like, I don't want to try, or I don't want to bother, because somebody else really doesn't care and really doesn't want to bother with something that they don't like. And then because we're all in the same spot, being told in school I should say, being told that we're supposed to care about the same things, then everybody wants to be like everybody else, and it just turns into a tough situation where this sentiment of just not caring is a cool thing, and pointless. You lose such an ability as awareness, and awareness is everything. And kids are super aware. I don't care what anybody says, man. Adults say that like kids, our kids are ping ponging over here, over there, over there. Whoa, whoa, whoa. They're aware. They are aware. They may not be focusing on one thing at whatever time, right? And that's fine. Like they don't really have to. They don't have to, enjoy everything. They don't have to put their deepest focus into everything. But the things that they are looking at, even for that brief moment, they are there, man. Like they are there. They're paying attention, and they are paying attention to every detail, and they are asking questions. They are wondering. They're trying to understand further. I was thinking about that too while I was driving. I'm like, man, how come I don't really question the experience of driving anymore? Like what it really is driving. Like what stuff like that. Like, I've already turned it into a routine, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is just driving. I come and turn my brain off, and I get places. Like, that's dangerous. That's how car crashes happen, you know? Like, wow. But with presence, you have real focus. With presence, you could notice more. With presence, you bring more clues into your picture of the world, which allows you to intuit a lot more, right? So if you see more factors of the picture, then you can tell where the picture's going, you know? If I see a lot of lines going down to, a certain point, I can assume that even if I don't see that point down there, they're going to meet up down there at that point. You know what I'm saying? Especially if I keep seeing more and more lines and I keep noticing more and more lines rather than just looking at one line halfway and then forgetting that I even have to look at that line because I know it's there. Because I know it's there instead of experiencing it being there every time I'm gonna go experience it, right? So observation will is something that I think that you can certainly cultivate too, and I think that is very very beneficial if you do. Now here's the fun one, right? Conqueror's will. That is literally just belief in yourself. That's just belief in yourself. You believe in yourself, you got the will of a conqueror. And that's like the joke, that's the whole, it feels like a joke, but it's just the truth. It's just so true. And true things are funny, man. But yeah, if you believe in yourself, then you're like miles ahead. I mean, miles ahead of like most of the competition out there. Because a lot of people will just throw their hat in the ring, not really believing in themselves and just hoping that there's going to be some sort of momentum that builds that makes them believe in themselves, which can happen. Totally be the case. I'm not telling anybody not to go about things that way, but I will say that as soon as you do have that belief in yourself, as soon as you do believe, you know what? I can go and accomplish this thing. You know what? I think this is the thing that I need to do. You know what? I think I'm going to do this, As soon as you decide that's it, that's what you're going for, and like it doesn't matter like win, lose, die, rain, fall, whatever, it doesn't matter. As soon as you have that sort of decisive action about what you're doing, you're leagues ahead of everyone else, right? And that's something that no one can take away from you, and that's something that not many people can handle. Not many people can handle that sort of conviction. It doesn't make sense to them because in their minds they're like, oh no, you can't be so certain of anything, right? This world's so uncertain. This world's this world's that. And they let themselves be swayed by the world outside of them, right? You can control what you go for and the things that you put faith in, and in that you can certainly put full belief into. So that is a will of a conqueror, I believe, at least what is conveyed in the story of One Piece. Anyway, and in my little life parallels here, but yeah, those are my fun little my little looks into will and looks into the world of One Piece, their abilities, and how I think that they translate into real life, and how we can better our lives by reading this amazing story. Yeah, so cool stuff. Just wanted to make a video before it got too late. It's already really late. But we're still going, baby. One video every day. You already know. All right, I'm leaving. Good night, guys. I'm going to bed. Good night. I love you. Peace.